your trip. I'm Lisa Mizrahi-Cato. I'm president of the Women's Political Caucus of New Jersey. For those of you who are not familiar with Caucus, I'm going to give you a little bit of background. I'm not going to keep it too long. Started in New Jersey in 1972, but we're part of a national organization, and our mission is to promote the number of women in appointed and elected office, to protect reproductive freedom, and to create a political battle base to achieve equality for all women. So it's about equality, it's about freedom, and it's about getting women into those powers of decision-making.
Alice Paul Institute, and thank you for coming and joining us to celebrate Women's History Month. It's fitting that the Alice Paul Institute is hosting this event with the Political Caucus, since Alice Paul was one of the most important historical figures of the 20th century to advance the civil and political rights of women. Most of the people in this room are familiar with Alice's work to achieve suffrage for women, and some of you are familiar with her post-suffrage work. But for those of you who don't know her whole story, Alice was the author of the Equal Rights Amendment. She wrote it in 1923 and spent the rest of her life until 1977 trying to have that amendment passed and working for women's equality worldwide. The Alice Paul Institute is a nonprofit organization, and our mission here is to preserve her legacy in order to develop future leaders, or future Alice Pauls, as we like to say.
1977, I was president of our local League of Women Voters in Chatham, and someone asked if there was information about the ERA. I mean, I was not only socially conscious, but I was really turned on to social justice by the civil rights movement when I was in college in the early 60s. I mean, I was definitely a bit of a rabble-rouser, but I just hadn't clicked into the Equal Rights Amendment. It just wasn't on my screen. And so somebody asked me if the League files had anything about the ERA, and I started reading, and I said, what's to argue? Why are people opposed? How can anybody be patient going on? Because pretty much, let me think how to say it. I don't want to overgeneralize and then not be true about it, but that struggle on the whole was housewives on one side against housewives on the other side, because the women who really had to work for a living were not doing the same kind of thing that people like me and Phyllis, had time to do. I'm not putting me, please don't put me in the same But, so even that misrepresentation that it was the iconoclastic women who want to be men against the real women was a completely false setup. So but again, do you think fear is still being used as a tactic? Let's raise our hand. The good news is, look at those numbers of how many people support the premise. They intentionally did not use the term Equal Rights Amendment because it's so loaded. They said equality of rights and the Constitution. What is it? 96% say it should be. I want to say, where's that other 4%? Let me know. 88, I think, percent say it should be in the Constitution. Why didn't we get? I mean, I agree that goes back to the question, what has happened? And the next one, though, is what I'm talking about. 3/4 almost of people think we have constitutional guarantee of equal rights. So it's like, okay, we've got to go back pre-square one and explain to people that we don't have it because it feels most people, that's not a women's rights amendment. We know functionally the ones who have been disadvantaged have been far more women than men, but it's equally potent as a legal tool to, if there's a time, a situation in which a male is discriminated against on the basis of sex, he whips out the Equal Rights Amendment. It's not just for women's rights.